All right. Well, a little bit of a different look up here today. That is because this is the guy takeover for the Petal Talk podcast. So normally you have Allison and, you know, Jenna's behind the scenes, but the guys decided to take this over. So we have Allison's husband, Justin, and myself, Ryan. We're going to take this pod over today.
Yeah.
And I know 100% of the viewers are a female audience that's into beauty and skincare and all of that. So we're just asking you, give us a chance, ladies.
Yeah, give me a shot.
Give us a shot here.
I feel like I have nice skin, right?
Dude, right? I mean, listen, you know, we're into all of that. But give us a shot. Check out our conversation. We're going to learn a lot about Justin, your background here. And so we're going to dive in. Feel free to comment too and subscribe. And listen, if you all feel that we're the better host for this podcast and you want to see us take it over full time, you let us know, and we'll keep Allison in the background where she's at right now.
That's right. That's right. Just a little spouse swap. I'll just sit in her chair from now on.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Petal Talk, where skincare meets soul care.
Awesome. Well, yeah, man, I'm glad you're here. We've talked about doing this. So I want to interview you a little bit, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes. So
let's roll.
Justin Crowder. Let's back it all the way up, right?
Okay. All right.
Let's start with where you're from. You know, obviously we're here in Florida, but let's go back to where you're from, your life as a kid and kind of your dynamic growing up, and then we'll start to bring that journey here where you're at now.
Yeah, for sure. So Southern California born, right? We'd moved around a little bit. We went up to Northern California, and then by the time I was 4 or 5, we were living in Vegas, which is where I lived the vast majority of my life, right? So grew up there, went to high school there, you know, the whole thing, and then I left a couple times and then always kind of came back, which we can kind of swing back around to. So eventually made it out to Florida, which we're digging out here. We really like Florida itself. It's been a cool transition, but yeah, grew up in Vegas. Like I said, always went to school there. After high school, I went to Idaho for a short period of time.
Okay.
Came back to Vegas. After Idaho, what did I do after that? Jeez. I went to Portugal for a little bit. Came back.
Okay.
Then I went to Phoenix for about a year and a half.
Portugal, quick. What takes you to Portugal from Vegas?
So I went on a mission for the church that you know I grew up in and my whole family is a big part of. So originally it was supposed to be for 2 years. I ended up getting really sick and had to come home. And I was only gone for like 6 months. So it was cut way short, but it was beautiful. A lot of crazy stuff happened in my short time there. I ended up having to come back. I had like a full reconstructive surgery on my chest. It was like a whole ordeal, right? So it was crazy. You know, you get to spend some time outside of the States and you get to really experience other cultures and things like that. And I think it's something that a lot of people that live and grow up in the States either one, don't realize, or two, kind of take for granted at how different it is here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just even like the regular day-to-day and like their viewpoints on things and how they live their lives is so different, right? Not that it's wrong, it's just different.
Yeah,
right? And you get to learn those different things, which is, it's cool, and it makes you really appreciate what you have and what you're brought up with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just like, for instance, like they're the average like Portuguese person, they wake up, everyone lives in apartments, and they walk down to the bottom floor of their apartment, and there's a cafe there. And there's a cafe at the bottom of every single like apartment building.
Wow.
And they just sit there, and they just drink these little shots of espresso and eat their little pastry, and then they go to work. Sometimes a lot of people just don't work there. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't work, but have like a smartphone and nice TVs and all that stuff. And then
so definitely slow pace there compared to here.
Well, then they take like a 2-hour lunch, go home, take a nap, and then they eat dinner at like 9 o'clock, and then that's like their whole day.
I might need to look into moving to Portugal. Right, sounds like my type of life.
Yeah. So, anyways, I came back from Portugal, had that whole surgery operation thing done. That took me out for a while.
How old are you at this time?
20.
Okay.
1920.
Okay.
1920. And then, because I turned 21 shortly after. So, growing up in Vegas at the schools and stuff, if you have like a certain GPA, you're automatically qualified for small scholarships for if you want to go to school in Vegas, right? So when I was back from Portugal, kind of healing up from my surgery, I still had no idea what I really wanted to do with my life, you know? So I just started going to school and taking classes and things like that. And I'd had a lot of really good influences growing up and kind of where I wanted to be at the end, right? Like you hear so many people say like, oh, I wish I would have done this. Oh, I wish I would have done that. Like, and just, I remember even being like a little kid thinking, man, I don't want to be the guy that grows up and says, man, I wish I would have done this. Like if I'm going to do something cool, like let's do it now. Yeah. Right. Like don't waste time. So I'm looking back going, man, I wish I would have done that. So I was going to school in Vegas, and it's a funny story. As at the time, it was myself, my best friend Ty, and my sister Jordan. That's been on the show. And we were all in a philosophy class together. And I'll never forget it. The professor's name was Joel Tierno, and we butt heads every single time I was in that class. And the dude just drove me nuts. And I know I drew him nuts too, because he would he's a professor, right? But I would call him out all the time. Like, I don't agree with that, right? And that was kind of one of the cool things about the philosophy class itself, is because it really is kind of open for
they open that door,
You know what I mean? It's not like math is math or science is science. It's we get to kind of make things up as we go. Yeah, in a way, right? And the day I ended up leaving, we were talking about self-criticism and how evaluating your own life is one of the hardest things that you can do. And I just kind of sat back in my chair. I think I was like doodling a motorcycle at the time, right? And Jordan always laughs because she would always look over. My whole notebook is just full of drawings of bikes and stuff. And I kind of sat back and said, you know what? You're right. And I hate this. I hate this right now. And I packed my stuff up and I left. And I just didn't go back to school.
Wow.
And
so you just walked out. When you say you left, like you got up and left, or you...
I think I waited for like that class to end. But I didn't go to my class after
Never
that.
Went back.
I said, that's enough. And I just went out the parking lot. I think I called my dad and I was like, I'm totally switching my life around right now. And he's like, okay, whatever, dude. And I, at that moment, so I kind of was wanting to get into like the motorcycle space. And I've always kind of found myself to be a creative person, right? And I always wanted to find like a medium that I could express myself. And at the time I really thought it was, I wanted to like build custom motorcycles and like learn how to like weld and fabricate and paint and like do all this stuff, right? Because I grew up watching these different shows where these guys would do this sort of thing, and it was all I could pay attention to. Yeah. It was it, man. And to this day, I will still talk about like these specific episodes of these specific guys, and I'll talk about the bikes and stuff. In fact, one of my best friends was just in New York just a couple weeks ago up for a bike event, and he posted some stuff on his story of this guy. His name was Indian Larry, and he was this guy that I really looked up to when I was a kid, and he had some specific bikes, and we were kind of chatting back and forth about it. But it's like these little images that I have that I think about all the time, like still to this day, right? And so when I left going to college, I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do it. So I signed up for the motorcycle mechanic school in Phoenix. Actually, let me take a step back. I went back to work for a little bit. I worked for my uncle in like an equipment industry. Okay. Made decent money and stuff, but I knew that I wanted to work there, save a bunch of money so that I could go to school. So that was kind of my plan. And while I was there, I think about this moment a lot too. I was just like the shop kid. You know, I would drive big trucks, and I always loved it, right? Because I got to go to cool places where I'd go to like these different mine sites and drop off parts and like help our mechanics work on these like giant machines that, you know, crush rock and stuff like that. And there's like some cool mines out in Vegas where I'd go and they'd be like blasting, and you just see it like the whole earth would like shake. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing. I was like, man, I could do this forever, right? But that's what you think when you're
yeah, of course,
like a kid, right? You're like, but at one point they kind of brought me into the building, and I was doing like inside sales for them for a short time. And my uncle's like, hey man, like if you're gonna stick around here, I really want to send you to Utah and have you like run the store there. It was like a newer, smaller store there. And I kind of like found myself at like this weird like crossroads for a little bit, and he knew like I wanted to go to school, right? I wanted to learn to be around bikes and how to work on bikes and stuff like that. But he was also kind of like lending me a hand. He's like, hey man, I know you'd be great at this if you want to do it. And up until then, you know, I'd made a lot of decisions in my life that I kind of wanted to go this way or whatever. That was like my first real, like, which way am I going to go? And Alice and I kind of joke about this sometimes. I'm just like, man, how different would my life be right now?
Yeah.
You know, if I would have moved to a small town in Utah.
Yeah.
And worked in that sort of industry, right? And I think it would have ended up great.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been a completely different life than what I have now. But I know that I would have done well at it. But my uncle was cool, and I told him, I said, hey, man, I'm going to go to school. And he was real cool about it. So I ended up moving to Phoenix. And
where did that passion for motorcycles come from? It was just in you as a kid. You weren't around them or surrounded by them, or no family?
No one in my like immediate family grew up around bikes. Like I had some cousins that had like dirt bikes and stuff. But that was also like pretty removed.
Okay.
And you know, when my parents tell a story, they laugh, right? Because I'd be this tall, and anytime a bike would go by, like it's just laser focused, right?
Yeah.
You were just
kind of born with that passion,
bro.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just. And Allison laughs at me because anytime we're having a conversation, like a loud bike or like a loud car goes back, I'm still like that, right? It's still like a squirrel. Like yeah, totally. And I remember very vividly, I was probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old, somewhere in that. We're on St. Rose Parkway in Las Vegas, and we were sitting at a stoplight. And these two dudes, they were on sport bikes, right? And my whole like life and career is around Harleys, but they were on sport bikes. They came up, they split lanes between us, right? Because we were stopped at a stoplight, so they like come up between the cars, which is not legal, right? Light turns green, they hammer it, they rip a wheelie and fly up the hill. And I just remember
that was
like,
it for you,
I was like, what was that? Right? And I asked my dad, and I was like, hey man, do like motorcycles not have to follow all the rules? And sarcastically answering, he was all, yeah, not really. I'm like, cool, that's it.
Sign me up.
That's what I want to do. And so from a kid, dude, that was
it was just in you.
That was it. So, and when I was like 10 years old, my parents bought me my first little dirt bike. And dude, it was the coolest thing, man. I was on cloud 9.
Yeah.
And I actually crashed that bike really bad at like 10. And I had to go to the hospital and all this stuff. And so I didn't get to ride much after that. So from that on, there wasn't a whole lot of motorcycles actually in my life, right? Like we would go and like rent 4-wheelers and stuff when we'd go up to the cabin or things like that. But I didn't really ride like a ton, but I always just felt like this weird like pull inside of me, like that I wanted to be around bikes. So that's kind of where that came from. So I moved to Phoenix, and it's kind of funny because it's a trade school, right? Yeah. Which I feel very strongly about. And it's kind of funny because I know a lot of trade schools sort of get a little bit of flack sometimes. And it's something that Alice and I are both very passionate about, our different trade schools. And I think for me, and I'm sure you can probably appreciate this, one of the reasons I have such a hard time with the traditional like university is, dude, I cannot get past like paying for classes that I'm not going to need.
Yeah,
right?
at all.
Like, and I get it. Like,
you're
going through middle school, you're going through high school. Like, they should be, making you well-rounded. But if I'm going to go to school, I'm going to pay a lot of money for it. I want to be doing the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what always just kind of draw me to trade schools. Plus, like, I don't think the trades are ever going away, right? The thing, as more things get automated, they're going to start slowing down, but I do think that there's always going to be a need for
and
some
I feel
of
like
it,
parents don't push their kids in that direction,
right?
But it's something we need.
Oh, for sure.
We talk about that a lot.
For sure.
Like a lot of those trades, it's like the kids don't ever get directed in those, but we need it because even with automations and all of this stuff, there's still a lot of parts of that you're still going to need humans for. And kids now aren't really learning those traits.
Yeah, well, and people take it for granted and they take advantage of it, and like people don't realize. I mean, they're doing construction across the street from the roads right now, right? There's dudes out there doing hard work, pouring concrete as we were pulling up, and a lot of people don't realize that to have these microphones or have these things or the building or the lights or whatever, like people need to work and do it, right? So, anyways, going to school, and just like any trade school, it's or any school for that matter, you definitely get out of it what you put in, right? And showing up to school, dude, I didn't know anything about bikes. I just know that I liked them.
Yeah.
Right? And I bought my first bike, my first Harley Davidson, dude, like 6 months before I went to school, maybe, right? And so, like, I was still, like, relatively new, and it was super cool, dude. Because I was already, like, ready. I was going to go to school. My dad was like, when are you going to get a bike, dude? I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to get one. And it's like, you can't go to motorcycle school without owning a bike, dude.
Be a poser in there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah. And when I bought my first bike, my mom cried and stuff, but she's all about it now, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, so, you get to school, and you're around all these guys that have very different backgrounds, right? And a lot of trades have a lot of vets and things like that, or guys that have kind of been around that industry. And so you get a very different group of people to be around than I was ever around growing up. And some of the absolute best dudes that I've ever met were at that school. Still very good friends with a handful of them. One of them was in my wedding. One of them came to my wedding from very far away, like just some of the best dudes. And
good people.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where a lot of guys, where you think, hey, they're going to do really well at this, didn't. They did really poorly, right? And then there was guys like myself that had no idea, but we were just so ready to be there and so ready to learn that ended up sticking with it, finishing school, going off to work in some sort of aspect of that, and still do it, And as we're going through school, and I quickly found out it was more of a, like, train you to work in a dealership sort of school.
Yeah.
And I was kind of hoping that it was a little bit more of a learn how to, like, build stuff type school.
That's right? What I was going to ask you, not to jump, but because you're primarily in sales right now, but is that the direction that you really want to go, or your real passion is, or is it in the building side?
Well, now it's totally different than what it was. And at the time, it was just building and being creative, right? And kind of putting I guess it was, now that you say it, I guess it was kind of always like in the back of my mind, right? Because in order to, just because you build something cool doesn't mean you're going to be successful doing it. Like, you still have to be the person that's going to get out there and technically sell it, right? Whether that's through, medias or just making the different products, which is one thing that I actually have a really hard time with about the motorcycle community as a whole, is there are some guys, actually a lot of guys out there that make really good products or have like a really good following that are just dicks, honestly. They're really hard to talk to. They're not friendly, and it makes this is a select group of like the motorcycle industry, but guys that ride bikes, they want to be big, bad, and tough, and sometimes it just kind of deters from what riding bikes is really about. So, but anyways, that was kind of way off topic, but I could talk about that forever.
We're going to jump, yeah.
Yeah, I could talk about that sort of stuff forever, right? And they talk about like not meeting your heroes, right? And I've met some of the guys that I used to really look up to in the motorcycle scene. I'm like, that was terrible.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I quickly found out I did not want to be a mechanic.
Okay.
Right? Like, very quickly. But I'm also a very competitive person, so when we'd go through the courses, first of all, I always want to, be at the top of the class, right? But we would have like tests and stuff, and every single course, they would give like a student of the course pin. And like you get like a little award for it, right? And so every single course, it was always me and this dude, Aaron. We would go back and forth. And there was a couple people that would kind of sneak in there, but like I always wanted to beat this guy, Aaron, because he was always he was always the best, right? And he's still a tech to this day. So yeah, I was like, dude, I don't want to do this, but I'm still going to give it everything I have, and we'll finish strong, and then we'll figure it out from there. So I still had maybe just shy of a year left of school, and two people from the dealership that I bought my first bike from in Vegas came to Phoenix to do on-campus interviews. And a lot of different dealerships do that to
recruit.
Yeah. Right? And obviously it's the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute, so they're usually looking for technicians. So when I got there, I walked into the interview, and really these interviews are supposed to be reserved for guys that are pretty close to finishing school, so they can jump into it right afterwards. But because they were from where I bought my bike and from back home, I was like, I'm going to talk to these guys and just kind of drop my name in the hat, and we'll see what goes from there. And At the time, and even still now, that dealership, it's Red Rock Harley Davidson. They have a phenomenal service department, and consistently ranked in the top 1, 2, 3 across the whole nation. Right, so they have the staff that goes with it. So I walk in this interview, and I sit down, and the first thing they say to me is, "Hey, just so you know, we're not really looking for techs right now." And I just laugh and I say, "Huh, good for you. I don't want to be a tech." And they just kind of look at me. They're like, "All right, then,
okay,
what are you doing here?" Right? And it was 2 people. One, his name is Gerald. He's still the parts manager at Red Rock Harley Davidson. And the other, her name is Erica, who ended up later in life being my biggest mentor and someone that I look up to a lot and I'm still very close with. And I'm sure we'll talk about her again here later on. But they let me know. They said, "We're looking for parts guys or salespeople." And I was like, all right, well, like, I don't know if I want to do that, but good to meet you, right? And,
yeah.
And they asked a question that Erica still uses in interviews and that I sometimes use in interviews, and she asks, if you could be a sea creature, what would you pick and why?
Okay.
And I said a swordfish.
A swordfish.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because my answer is they can mess you up and they look good doing it, right? I said, man, when they're swimming through the water, they just look cool, man. And they get it done. And they're like, okay, we've never heard that answer before. And it ended up helping me a little bit later on. Like I was reaching out. I was like, hey, I was a guy that said I wanted to be a swordfish. And they're like, oh, yeah, cool.
Stood out.
Right? So when I was getting close to finishing school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was feeling a little anxious. And I was like, dude, like, I could be a tech, but I knew that I always wanted to make more money than what comes with being a motorcycle mechanic, right? And don't get me wrong, there's lots of guys that do it that make a decent living that have been doing it for a long time. But I just knew that's not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I also knew, because I pick up and tend to drop hobbies fairly quickly, that if I loved just the brand of Harley Davidson and motorcycles so much, I knew that if I was working on other people's bikes all day long, I would never enjoy my own. I'd get burnt out super fast, and I'd never ride, and I'd hate it. And then I'd be in the exact same spot trying to figure out something else to do, right? So since I had that interview, I would send Erica an email like every month. Like, hey, just checking in. This is what I'm doing in school. This is where I'm at. And she would sometimes respond, sometimes not. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. And it's funny. We had a conversation about it not that long before he left Vegas, and she was like, all right, dude, whatever. You know? But to me, like, it was super important.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was getting close to finishing school, and my good buddy Wes and I were going to head back to Vegas for like Memorial Day or some holiday like that. And I called Erica probably like 3 times before like I got a hold of her. I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Like, can I swing by? She was like, okay, sure. And I had my hair growing out at the time, right? And
like long hair?
It was like,
oh, really?
Like right before I cut it, it was like just like touching
really?
my shoulder.
You had the long hair like that?
It was
okay.
bad. Right?
Okay.
It was bad, dude. It was
we'll put some
good.
pictures up in the podcast. Yeah, we'll slide those up.
I don't have that many because it wasn't good. Right? But I could like pull it back and it would look nice, right?
Yeah.
And I showed up and I you know, kind of had the conversation. And I think up until then, like I don't want to say like didn't take me seriously, but when a lot of these dealerships go to these schools, a lot of kids want to work there, right? So they get people reaching out to them all the time,
yeah,
right? And then they end up never showing up or whatever, right? But anyways, when I came to visit, she like kind of loosely said, okay, like when you're ready, like I have a sales spot for you if you want it. So like, okay, cool. Dang. So I went back to school and I was like, oh, do I want to be a salesman? It was kind of unsure, right? Because it's a commission-based job. And,
yeah, man.
And my, growing up, people are always like, oh, if you're on commission, you don't know if you're going to be able to pay your bills, and you don't know if you're going to be able to do this and that. And that gets to you when you're younger, right? And you're looking up to people that are successful, and they're like, I don't know. You're like,
yeah,
okay.
It's tough.
Right? And my dad has always had some sort of like sales role, like always. And I always joke that he could sell you the t-shirt that you're wearing right now. And he was just like, yeah, man, if that's what you want to do, it's going to be hard, but get after it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I called her up. I said, hey, I'm going to be part of the team. I finished school in Phoenix. 3 days later, I was back in Vegas selling bikes.
Wow. And how long ago was this?
I went to school in like 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of 16, 17, somewhere around there. And from there, dude, I just 2 feet in. And it's all I did for years. And I loved it. It was incredible, right? And it was hard, like everyone had told me. And I just gave it everything.
Sales is very hard, but I still think it's the best skill set to have.
Oh, for sure.
I think if you have sales, I just don't think you ever have to work. Because I got Peyton, he's a car dealer.
Yeah.
He's at a car dealership now at, 1920.
Yeah.
And I tell him the same thing, man, it's hard. And he's learning because it's commission only, right? And he's been in the bucket or whatever, and I don't really still understand that system, but, he doesn't get paid. Yeah. And, but I always tell him, I'm like, dude, if you stick through this, whether it's in, a dealership or not, just having that skill set's the best ever, man.
Oh, for sure. Well, and the joke always is, you could have the best product in the world, and you could sell it for $1, but you're still going to need someone to sell it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So... But yeah, so I started selling bikes at Red Rock, and I know we talked about this kind of jokingly beforehand, and I still get it all the time when people find out that I went to school and like, why aren't you working on bikes? Like, why'd you spend this money to go to school and now you're in sales? And I just kind of chuckle and say, the only thing I've ever been good at is talking shit. So
yeah, it works, and you get to sell the thing you love, right? So that works out.
And that's the thing, man. Especially when I was still super fresh. It's all I cared about, right? Harley Davidson as a brand and the culture, that's all I wanted to do. I was either at work selling bikes, out with my buddies riding bikes, or working on our own bikes.
Yeah.
Right? That was it. And like I had mentioned, I'm a competitive person, and I always joke that it's not that I have to win. I just hate losing.
Yeah.
I hate losing.
It's the worst feeling, right?
Right? And so when you're in a sales department and you have, you're working with 8 to 12 other sales guys, you have a big whiteboard with everyone's name on it, and it changes every month, and you put a little X for every bike that you sell. Right? And if I wasn't at the top of the board with the most X's, I was pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you try not to show it, and you try to get along with everybody. You're like, I want to be the guy at the top of the board. And just throughout some different people, and like I said, some mentors and some people that I really learned a lot of stuff from. And honestly, just willing to be the guy that was always going to be there for the people that I worked with. Yeah. Right? I definitely moved up pretty quick, and people always ask me how that happened. And I always just say I wanted to make sure that when a spot came open, that there wasn't a question with anyone else that I worked with why I was getting that spot.
Yeah.
Right? I was going to be there on my day off. I was going to stay there late. I was never going to take my lunch break. I was never going to miss a phone call I was supposed to make. I wasn't going to complain about the stuff that, honestly, isn't that fun? Shooting the emails and sending the texts that. People want to be out on the floor selling things, but it takes a little bit of discipline to sit down and make 50 phone calls a day, 25 phone calls a day, 100 phone calls a day if it's rainy outside to get people to come back in. And just always open to different opportunities to go into classes, to learn and stuff like that. And yeah, man, that's just how my life's been. So
there's another topic I want to go into on the motorcycles, but there's also something else I'm interested in knowing, and it's backing up a little bit. But growing up in Vegas, right? Because you're talking middle school, high school,
whole life pretty much.
What is that like? I don't know. I couldn't imagine. Yeah. But what is it like growing up in Vegas? Because obviously most people, you only think of partying in casinos, right? But I'm sure when you live there, there's obviously more than that. But growing up there, what is that like?
There's not a lot more to Vegas.
Really? So okay.
Just like anywhere else, you have your communities, right? You're gonna have your parks, and you're gonna have your people that live there, and you can do stuff to live. But growing up in Vegas is kind of hard, right?
That's what I was wondering. Is it you obviously you're surrounded by so much, right? Yeah. So peer pressure has to be significant compared to kids who are going to Lake Mary. You know what I mean? So you're exposed to a lot more.
Yeah, and there wasn't a whole lot to do growing up besides getting into trouble.
Yeah.
Right? And honestly, that's one of the reasons we wanted to leave Vegas is, if we're going to, build our own family, I didn't really want to necessarily raise kids in Vegas. And don't get me wrong, I had a great childhood. My parents are rock stars. Like they did a phenomenal job. But there's one thing that's really hard about Vegas is it is such a melting pot for different people and industries and stuff like that, to the point where it's almost excessive, right? Where it almost feels like someone failed at wherever or whatever they were doing and came to Vegas, almost like looking to get rich or like a gold strike sort of deal, right? Which in turn makes it very hard to form like genuine connections with people, or honestly just kind of find real people. Allison, she's the easiest person to get along with, right?
Yeah.
She's funny. She is very charismatic. And if someone like that can have a hard time making a genuine connection in Vegas, it's tough.
It's tough.
It's
tough.
And a lot of people that I grew up with in high school are still friends with their friends in high school, but don't really have anything beyond that, right? Like, the only reason I was able to make a good amount of friends in Vegas was because of the bike scene.
Yeah.
But it was because it was riding motorcycles, right? And I'm really only still friends with my buddy Ty that we've always grown up together, and we've always had different interests, but that's my boy. We'll always be.
Seems like an easy place to get stuck into.
Yeah.
Like, for people that are born and raised there, right? Like, obviously you moved around, but I just imagine that people get stuck there and it's very hard to get out of.
Yeah.
And so to really elevate in life, it's probably challenging.
Well, I mean, to a fault, Vegas is a great place for people that, I don't want to say I don't know. I don't know how to phrase it. I'm not saying don't have skills. That's not what I'm saying at all. But for people that can just show up and get a good paying job without really having to do a whole lot of work to get there, right? Like, it doesn't take much to go learn how to be a gaming host or to be a server, right? Like, we joke all the time that there's a lot of professional hot people in Vegas, right? Which is don't get me wrong, they make a ton of money just by being good looking people, handing out bottles and stuff like that. But it is tough.
Yeah.
When you asked about, growing up in peer pressure and things, and there was a lot of it, right? And because it's such a progressive space, even the younger kids, man, they had to go through way more than even I did. Because I have 4 sisters, right? They're all younger. Yeah. And even my younger sisters had to deal with progressively more as they would go through high school, right? My second to youngest sister, she was in middle school, her first day of 6th grade. A dozen kids got expelled for doing pills in the bathroom. Right? Isn't that wild, dude?
That is wild.
That's great. And so, I'm sure that doesn't happen in Lake Mary, Florida.
Yeah,
you know, so that's little things like that are why we want to, build a family.
Yeah, and get away from
not there. And again, dude, I really did have such a great time growing up just because my parents really put in a lot of effort, you know.
They're still in Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my folks are there, and, Jordan lives here, and then my other sister lives in Idaho, and then everyone else lives in Vegas. So.
Yeah. All right. Now I want to bounce back to the motorcycle, because one thing that comes with motorcycles, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I went through a phase when I was a kid, and I don't know where it came from and why I got away from it. I think I knew how irresponsible I was, because I was given a dirt bike, right? I got an XR50 at a very young age.
Yeah, cool.
And then I got into the dirt bike primarily, and then I started getting into the street bike. And I'll never forget when I was 19 maybe, I wanted a Ninja.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Sure.
So I went to the dealership, went through all of the paperwork, had everything from the gear and everything ready to sign, and I backed out last minute because I knew, I just had this feeling where I was like, dude, you're going to kill yourself. There's just, right? I'm just not responsible enough, or at least at that age I wasn't. And ever since then, I just kind of phased out of it because I was really big, especially into the dirt bike scene. But that danger of it, right? And I know you have some
battle scars,
scars and stuff like that. I just genuinely want to know about those. Yeah. So what about those impacts on a motorcycle, or what have have you been in bad accidents or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've had a couple wrecks. So, I mean, I do know what you mean about people feeling like I'm going to kill myself. And this is going to sound so morbid. It's not meant to. I don't care. right?
Yeah.
And the reason I feel that way is because I have very strictly lived my life to where, like, if I was to die tomorrow, like, I feel like I would be okay with that just because I have lived. I feel like I've done a lot of cool stuff.
That's a great place to be, though.
You know what I mean?
And not a lot of people get there.
Yeah, and there's still a ton of stuff that I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, being married and stuff like that. Like, I want to grow that and build that. And, you know, focus is changing, but for a really long time, like, I had a great group of core friends. I had a great job. I had great hobbies. Like, I felt very fulfilled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, and on top of that, dude, like, I like adrenaline type stuff. Like, I want my heart to bump. I like that feeling of, like, being, like, scared, right?
Yeah.
When you're going too fast or you're getting too close to a car or, like or you're jumping out of planes, like, all of that sort of, like, thing. It's like,
You love that.
sign me up.
Yeah, and you're not going to not do it
Right.
for something that could happen. Yeah,
Right.
Which doesn't.
Well, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with everything in life, right?
Yeah,
like
of course.
the fear of not doing something because it could potentially come out bad. Like, so I know so many people get stuck in a rut in their life because of that. Whether that's in business or whatever, they just get so stuck, right? So, but yeah, definitely having hobbies like that comes with getting hurt, right? And it's the oldest line when it comes to riding bikes is it's not if you crash, it's when you crash, right? And
so
really
run me through a few of the injuries, because you're how old are you? 29. 29.
Yeah.
So what do you have going on here? Do you tell me? Run me through a little bit of it.
Yeah. So I've only had a couple, like, bad ones.
Okay.
Like several, especially, like, riding dirt bikes. Several, like, you know, you kind of wash out and you scrape it up, whatever. But when I was 10 years old, my parents bought me that little bike, and I was out in the desert, and dude. We were at a dry lake bed, right? So it's wide open, super flat. And I was with my other buddy. He had a little dirt bike as well. It was a Honda 50, right? And my parents were like, go have fun, stay close, be safe. Cool, right? And because it's a dry lake bed, you could hold it as fast as it would go and you'd be fine.
Yeah.
Right? So we were riding around doing a thing. There's like these little, like, mounds of dirt where, like, a plant was growing that you could, like, if you hit it right, you could do a little jump.
Yeah.
Right? Hit this little jump and we take off way further than our parents wanted us to go. But we were out there, of course. Then we come around and turn back, and I'm like 10 years old, holding it as fast as it would go. Third gear, all the way. And I come back and I hit this little jump again, dude. Sent me straight over the bars. Super far. The bike landed on top of me. It was like this whole thing. This guy that was way out there noticed, ran back and told my folks. They came and got me. You know, my whole life, both my dad and myself were like, we don't need to go to the doctor. Like, we're fine, right? But they're like, yo, we're going to go to the hospital. We're going to get you checked out. So I get to the hospital, and they thought I had ruptured my spleen. And that hospital was not equipped to deal that. So they were going to life flight me to a different hospital.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm super bummed, right? Because I didn't get to go in the helicopter because there's this lady...
So you're excited as this is going on. Okay.
I'm like, I'm going to go look up. Ryan, this lady, what they told the hospital is this lady was so fat they couldn't get her out of the helicopter.
She got stuck in the hospital.
They couldn't get her out, right? So we didn't get to go. So they put us in an ambulance and took us over where the brakes had some issues in the ambulance as we're going. And my mom's like screaming in the back of the ambulance. I'm strapped to this board like, oh my gosh. So I ended up not having a ruptured spleen, but I was pretty beat up after that. And then just growing up, like just scrapes and stuff from crashing the BMX bike or whatever. But in 2019 is when I had like my bad motorcycle accident.
Okay.
And
on the road.
On the freeway.
Yeah. Oh.
And it was end of June, Vegas summer night. It was hot. And there was a lot of traffic that night. And wrecked the bike. And I got pretty beat up. So I ended up shattering this arm pretty good. And they went in and I have a full rod in this arm. And I got my like zipper tattoo that comes from here and stops all the way up here, right? And I tore my tricep in this arm, dislocated my hip, bunch of road rash, things like that. And so that put me up in the hospital for a while. And it's kind of a joke. I know Allison talked about it a little bit when she was doing her shtick, but that's kind of what brought us back together a little bit. So, blessing and a curse, I guess. I had 2 bikes at the time, right? And my joke is always that I wish I was riding my other bike.
Other bike?
Yeah, because the one that I crashed, like, that was like my baby, dude. Like, that was like,
man.
I had it the exact way I wanted it. It was the coolest bike ever, bro. And I missed that bike. So, I was in the hospital. And some really funny stories came from being in the hospital then. You know, my family spent a lot of time with me in the hospital. My mom was there the whole time. Erica was there that I was talking about. She came and I didn't even work for her at that time. She had moved to a different store, and she came and saw me almost every single day I was in the hospital. And
How long were you in the hospital?
10, 12 days, something like that.
Oh, wow, okay.
I was there for a minute.
Yeah.
And I appreciate her because I knew she saw some stuff that she probably shouldn't have, but she just kept her mouth shut and just went along. You know, I got a catheter and all this stuff, and you know, just stuff's hanging out or whatever. So always appreciated that. But there's one kind of funny story. So I have a friend who she is a big stunt rider, right? And she was in nursing school at the time, and we had. Like we were like friends, but like we weren't like close, like by anyone's means. Like she was dating a guy that I was friends with, and we were kind of like always like around, right?
Yeah.
So we knew each other, but like we weren't like close or anything. But she came to see me when I was in the hospital when she had finished like a clinical or whatever it's called, like when they're in nursing school and they're done for the day, like they were hanging around or whatever. Right? So she came to see me, and we were hanging out or whatever, and it was cool. So she was there, my mom was there, Erica was there, and a nurse came in. They had just done some X-rays on my hip. On my whole pelvis. They're like, hey, do you guys want to see the scans? We're like, yeah, sure, cool, right? So, dude, they wheel in this projector, like the little stick thing with the computer on it. They pull up my scans, and all of us kind of go, huh? This is my whole junk, dude. Just right on the screen, bro. So I've got my boss, my mom, and this chick that we ride bikes with. They're all just like staring at my package, bro. We're just like, all right.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
Right? So that was that.
God.
And but yeah, I was real beat up from that accident. I had to do a lot of physical therapy and stuff like that. And
How long after something like that do you jump back on a motorcycle? Oh, man, asking you what the look. You can't see the look here. What is this, like he gets out of the hospital next day, you're on a bike?
So, yeah, I'm in the hospital, and mind you, they did surgery on this arm. So I've got casts and gauze on this arm. This arm is totally shattered. I can't move this arm at all, and it's swollen like 3 times the size of what my arm usually is.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, Mom, hand me my phone real quick. I just want to, like, spend some time, doing whatever.
Yeah.
Doing whatever. Maybe like 15, 20 minutes later, she looks over. She goes, what are you doing? I'm looking for bikes on my phone as I'm sitting in the hospital, dude.
Wow.
So, and when I'm home, kind of recuperating, I have my other bike, right, and I was just tired of being in the house. So I walk out, and it takes every piece of energy I have to get it up off the kickstand. And this arm was pretty functional. This arm, no. I had to take this arm, pick it up, and put it on the handlebar.
Oh my God.
And I already knew what was going to happen. So I made sure I was all the way like ready to go, and I just had like a t-shirt and jeans on. And I was just in the neighborhood, right? And so, of course, I wasn't wearing like a helmet or anything.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Start the bike up. Dude, my poor mother was outside.
Oh, I bet.
What are you doing? Dude, I'm fine. I'll be like right back. Dude, she was losing it. And I just kind of went for like a little around the neighborhood. But at the time, this arm, I could move from here to here. That was it, right? And so, yeah, man, I was ready to ride, and I had so I was at home. I'd been home for maybe a week. So stir crazy. Like, I got to go do something. And before I even wrecked, I was thinking about getting a new truck. And I was like, hey, I'm going out. Like, I'll be back in a little. They're like, you're going by yourself? Like, should you even be driving? I'm like, I'm fine. I'll be back. I drove straight to the car dealership, dude. I bought a brand new truck, and I was there. I found the one I liked, and I told the salesman, I'm like, yo, like, we have to make this process kind of quick because I don't have the energy to be here for that long. Like, I'm gonna have to leave if we can't do it quick. They're like, okay. And like I said, this arm was like super swollen, and I've always had pretty sensitive skin, and they had like there was dissolving stitches that were in this arm. Yeah. I had a steri strip over it that my skin was just having some really bad reactions to, and so it would like, this is kind of gross, it would like ooze like this like yellow junk and like flake off skin. Dude, it was gross. It was gross. God. So I would keep like a rag in my pocket and like just kind of wipe it off. And dude, and I'm left-handed, right? So I'm trying to like sign paperwork, and I'm having to pick my arm up to like sign things. God. And dude, the eyes on these salespeople were like this, but they're like, I bet. Are you okay? I'm like, shut up, just let's get it done, right? So buy the truck, go back home, and then like I'm ready to buy another bike, bro. Like my baby was gone. Like that bike was my pride and my joy. I rode that bike every day, everywhere, raining, 110 outside, freezing cold. I didn't care, right? I was on that bike all the time. And, you know, to Arizona and Utah and California, like that was my ride. Like I got to replace this bike. So I was looking up different bikes that I want to pick, and I found this one that I really like down in San Clemente. So in California. Yeah. And so I hopped in my truck, said, I'm going to pick up a bike, dude. So I get all the way down to San Clemente, and the dude could tell like my arms were still pretty jacked. So he like didn't let me ride the bike. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll just buy it. So I had to have him put in the back of my truck with these ramps that I had that weren't even very good ramps. I drove to, where was I? Huntington, to stay the night in Huntington. I was going to drive back later. Well, I just bought a brand new bike and to sit in the back of my truck. Oh my gosh. I wanted to go for a ride, dude. So I'm thinking to myself, I can figure it out. So I'm like, got my, crippled ass up there trying to pull this motorcycle out of the back of my truck. Well, it gets stuck. So there's a ramp and the bottom of the bike gets stuck on the tailgate. And I was just so weak, dude. I'm like, oh man, I'm in a bad spot right now. Like trying to hold this bike above me. And this dude in the hotel is like, yo, you need some help? And my whole life I would have been like, no, I got it. I was like, yeah, dude, please come help me. Right. So, so I was able to get the bike out, rode it around for a day or two, like a day and a half. And when I had to get the bike back in. Right, so it was like this whole ordeal. Like I had to get my truck to a Harley dealer down there. I had to get the bike to the Harley dealer down there, and they were able to help me put it back in and get the bike back in the truck, and I drove home. The reason I even started telling the story is you were asking about when I was getting back home. Yeah, how long? So I had to go to a lot of physical therapy, right? And it sucked, and I hated it, but it was super necessary because when I first went, they told me I was never going to be able to straighten either of my arms 100% anymore. I'm like, look at it. Anyways, so... my last day of physical therapy, because like everyone there knew me, because I was the youngest dude in there, right? It's a bunch of old people playing with like pennies and stuff for like their old crippled hands or whatever. And I'm in there like, dude, I do not belong here. And I would get pissed in physical therapy, right? Because they'd sit you in these stupid machines. I'm like, I feel like an idiot, right? Like, and then they would like lay me down on this table, and this physical therapist would just grab my arm because my arm was like locked up. Because it wasn't able to move. And he would just take his whole body weight and like push and pull on it. And he would just like look at me like, you ready? I'm like, let's go. And, I might have said some not appropriate words around old people yanking on me. So everyone like knew who I was. And the last day I was there, my physical therapist was like, yo, dude, just like take it easy. Make sure you're doing your exercises. Stay off bikes for a little bit. I'm like, yeah, right. I said, bro, I rode here today. My bike's in the parking lot, dude. And he'd have the exact same reaction. He's like, oh, no. So, yeah.
All I can think about is your parents at this point, right? Like, they're probably stressed to the max, right? Yeah, for sure. I could only imagine.
Yeah. My parent, the night that I crashed, my parents were out of town. And they were in California. And both my parents are just my mom. Yeah, that's right. My dad was in Georgia for a conference, and my mom had the girls. They were in California. They go to the beach. Cheer competition, excuse me. And at the time, I was just working a ton, right? And so when they brought me into the hospital, I just got hit hard, like going freeway speed, And so I was a little discombobulated and things like that. And they asked for like an emergency contact. And I gave them my mom's name, but I gave them the store's phone number.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what's the phone number? And I just rattled off the store's phone number.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have anyone to get a hold of.
Oh my God.
Right. So they came in. So I came in technically as like a John Doe. They didn't know who I was, even though I had my ID, which is really, really weird, but whatever. And so I was working at the Red Rock store, and Erica's daughter, her name is Peyton, one of my best friends, she was working at the store at the time, and I didn't show up to work the next day. I think it was a Saturday. And she was like, that's not like him.
Yeah.
Like there's no time that Justin doesn't just not show up and like not say anything. She's like, something's not good. And so she called Erica, and she's like, I haven't heard from him. And so then of course everyone's like freaking out. And Erica called the GM of Red Rock Harley. His name is Mike, and she was like, something's wrong. We need to find him. And they actually like found me first. Right, they found out that I was.
They just start calling around at hospitals.
Yeah,
or?
I think Erica talked to my mom or something. I don't know. There's a lot of details in that kind of went back and forth, and my mom just like called the hospital, and she's like, "Is my son there?" And they're like, "No," and they're like, "Okay," and then like called back, and she's like, "Hey, he might have come in, and you don't know who he is. He's this high. He looks like this." They're like, "Oh yeah, he's here." So she's like freaking out, right? So she like runs back to Vegas. I felt really bad for that. But it's kind of funny, we're talking about growing up in Vegas, and the joke is always that Vegas is a really big, small town. Like, everyone knows everybody in Vegas. And so I went to high school with this girl. She was a year older than me. We kind of like knew of each other, not very well, but then I got into bikes, she got into bikes, and so we kind of connected like that. Right? We were friends. And so we'd always kind of followed each other and things like that. And I have this pretty distinct memory of sitting on the highway, right? Like laying flat on the highway, just going, oh, this is not good, bro, right? And paramedics come pick me up, scoop me up in the ambulance. And there's a lot going on, right? And I'm sitting in the back of the ambulance, and I look up, and I'm all, hey. And the paramedic looks down and goes, hey. And it's this girl's boyfriend at the time, now husband, right? And so they took me in, and I was, cracking jokes the whole time in the hospital, in the ambulance. They're like, "What is your problem?" Right, all beat up and stuff. But so yeah, you get a little beat up riding bikes sometimes, and
it's just part of it.
It's just part of it,
yeah.
Right? And especially like a lot of my buddies that are in like the stunt scene and stuff like that all have nasty crashes and injuries and things like that. So, but I think. You know that going into riding bikes or into any sort of activity like that, and it's kind of funny when you see people get into a sport that haven't experienced getting hurt, and then when they do get hurt, how they are after that, right? A lot of people, they're like, I'm done.
Yeah,
that was
done.
Enough for me, right? But then a lot of other people are like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's how Jenna's dad, he still races dirt bikes to this day.
Yeah.
And he's had, I think, like over 30 surgeries, and he just still, doesn't matter. I'm complete opposite.
Yeah.
Complete opposite. And I always have been. Like, I'm like the cautious one. I'm 41, and I think the most I've ever done, I think I broke my pinky toe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was like 4 and I broke my first.
Yeah, I've never.
It was my cousin's fault.
And I'm almost like nervous saying it, but I'll say it like this: I escaped all of my childhood and all of that without ever going to a hospital or doctor for breaking anything. And maybe that's what it was with the dirt bike thing, because I did have I built like this. So, mind you, I grew up in the South, right? And this was a long time ago. So I built my own ramp in the front yard in a neighborhood for my dirt bike, right? A piece of plywood, and I think I put it on top of like a round log or something. Anyway, I decided I was going to haul through the front yard and jump, and it wasn't even a bad accident. And it was like shortly after that, I was like, yeah, basketball sounds great. And then
awesome.
and then I played basketball, and I remember I jumped and I fell and scratched my knee, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm done with basketball. like it was just like a little scrape, you know? It was just some concrete burn, and I was like, yeah, I'm done with basketball too. I don't know. I've just never been that way.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I've always admired that, because I would like to be more of, like, I would love to jump out of a plane. Would it ever happen? No possible way ever until I'm 80.
Let's go, bro.
I'll do it when I'm 80. When I'm 80 years old, I'll do it. I just, there's no way.
I'm going to take Allison's mom.
There's no way. I would probably die midair.
Yeah.
Probably die midair,
cool.
Yeah. So I've never been like that, man.
Jumping out of a plane is a feeling that you can't even like describe. It's insane.
Yeah, I would describe it as like, I'm gonna die. Like, and I'm not like attracted to that feeling. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But I would like to be, but it's just not the way I was wired. Yeah. But I admire that.
That's funny that the way that you worded that, attracted to that feeling, right? Because I've never thought about it like that, but any sort of time, like I've been in like a sticky situation, you kind of like chuckle, you're like, woo, all right, because I guess I am attracted
there
to that
is.
feeling.
It's like that. It's that level of risk, I think, that people love. And I got friends that are like that. I've just never been that way. Yeah. Dude, I like freak out on like certain kiddie roller coasters. Like, you know, so for me, it's just complete opposite. But yeah, I think that's bikes. One last random question about the motorcycle, and then I want to like speed up to kind of current.
Sure.
Helmets in Vegas, is it law? Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just curious, because here, obviously, it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
Which is crazy. I think it's cool, because obviously if I did ride, you know, and I'm in town or at the beach, it's obviously there's freedom to riding without a helmet. Yeah. But the interstate makes me nervous.
Yeah. So my opinion on helmets is just like seatbelts, no one should force me to wear a seatbelt. Now, should you wear a helmet? Yeah. Should you wear a seatbelt? Sure. Yeah. But it really pisses me off that the government thinks that they can tell me to do it.
You have to do this.
Yeah. Pisses me off. Yeah. Now, if I'm going to wear a helmet, which I do 90% of the time, it's going to be a full face helmet. Yeah. Or the like half shower people like really doesn't do much of anything, bro. Like when I crashed my bike, the whole front of the helmet was wrecked, right? Like,
so if you wouldn't have had that on,
Dunzo, bro.
Yeah.
Dunzo. Yeah. Like it would have shredded my face, seriously. Yeah. But there, like you mentioned, like anytime I was up in like Utah or like in the middle of Arizona in the mountains, it's a different feeling. Yeah, I bet. Not wearing a helmet, going through like a windy mountain road. Yeah. It is like the most freeing, like blissful feeling, and you just feel so connected to like your surroundings, and like because you just feel, I mean, you're gonna feel this no matter what you're riding, but like just the difference in like weather and temperature and like the wind and like the smells and stuff like that it's a different feeling. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I mean, you should probably wear a helmet. So yeah, it's good for your health.
Wear a helmet. It's safe.
Yeah, Allison doesn't like when I don't wear a helmet, but to give Allison a lot of credit, like she also knows like these are the things that I love and I'm passionate about, and I'm always going to do it. I'm always going to have bikes. I'm always going to want fast cars and stuff like that. And we had those conversations at the very beginning of our relationship, and she's like, all right. Yeah. So
comes with it.
Comes with it.
Yeah.
Comes with it.
So now Florida, right? Motorcycles. And I want to talk a little bit about, how do you like Florida? I mean, you're from, I always wanted to move to California until like the past 8 years when Jenna and I would go every year. Yeah. And I went out there every year for the past 15 years. Always loved it. And then I've just seen it decline. Yeah, dude. Like it's gotten so bad, but it used to be a place of desire, right? I love San Diego. I love Huntington Beach. Jenna and I go there a lot. And so, but coming from that and like even the mountains, because I guess when you are around the mountains, you want the beach. When you're around the beach, you want the mountains kind of thing. Yeah. But, you know, coming from Utah and the mountains and Vegas and California to now Lake Mary, Florida, is completely different. Yeah. What's your thoughts so far? Are you still on the side about it? Do you love it? What's your thoughts as far as moving to Florida from an area like that?
I have a lot of like mixed feelings.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of just to be expected. But I, like all of my hobbies are outdoors. Right. And one thing that was really, really hard to get used to moving here is I feel like I can't see anything when I'm outside.
Yeah.
Right. Where like you go out in the desert in Vegas, you can see for miles.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just out in the open. Where I feel here, just there's so much vegetation, it's really hard to see things.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew that I was going to miss the mountains. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss the mountains. Yeah. That's been tough.
Not
and
really a beach person.
I enjoy the beach.
You enjoy it?
I enjoy the beach a lot.
I would pick mountains over beach any day.
But I'm definitely mountains over beach. Right. Like I can, like especially if we're having like a vacation where like we're going to like the beach, your boy can sit his butt in the sand for some days and like be pretty cool about it. But one thing I will give props to California is their beaches there take the cake, bro. Like Huntington Beach
can't be.
Unfortunately the beach out here it doesn't have Huntington Beach, bro. It just isn't it.
I agree with you 100%.
But
yeah, I would pick the mountains.
Yeah.
Because we love the hiking aspect
Yeah.
and camping aspect. But then I also wonder if we lived there, I'd be like, missed the beach.
Yeah, I don't think I would miss the beach that much. But the thing about Florida, and we really enjoy Florida as a whole. The people here are great, dude.
Yeah.
Like how refreshing it has been to go somewhere where people are like kind to each other.
Yeah, even just passing,
Just
right?
passing.
Yeah.
Just passing. That has been really cool. Allison has had a phenomenal time in Florida, which I love, which makes me really happy. It's cool to be in a place where the thing about Florida, and Florida gets a lot of flack from people. You know what I mean? Like Florida man this, Florida. Whatever. But Florida owns it. And like I feel like Florida knows like what their identity is, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and dude, the weather here is so nice. So
see, I don't know. I know this has been a debate. The humidity here, I feel like, is so much worse than the dry heat. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe not.
Bro, I hate the summer humidity out here 100 times over the summer in Vegas. 100 times.
Yeah. I just hate the humidity, man. It's nasty.
Yeah. I will tell you, it gets colder here than I had expected. Not necessarily temperature. The temperature doesn't get low. But just because the air is so wet and I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like my insides are cold.
Yeah.
Like this last winter,
Our whole
I
month.
generally felt like my skin wasn't that cold, but my insides were cold.
Yeah,
and I didn't
yeah.
know how to like
It's weird.
work that. It was strange, but
yeah.
Florida's been cool. And you know, I spent so much time in the desert growing up. I got kind of tired of looking at gray rocks.
Yeah.
Right, and that's one thing. Like Vegas desert is very different than Utah and Arizona desert. Very different. Like Arizona desert is beautiful. It is gorgeous. It has a lot of red and different colors from like wildflowers and stuff like that. And a lot of Vegas desert is just like gray, you know?
Yeah.
So, but we were very ready for a change, and I am very grateful that we did it, right?
Yeah.
Especially before we had kids, and we just took the opportunity to we looked at each other and we said, we can do anything for a year, right? And if we love it, great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make it work. But if it sucks, then okay, like we at least gave it a shot.
Yeah.
You know, and fortunately it's been pretty solid, so.
This part we can block out if we need to, but as we like start getting towards the end here, can I talk about like, I want to avoid the job thing.
We can talk about it.
So we'll cut it out, but okay, so then I'll just go into the question about, I just want to see about the motorcycle industry and kind of your future with that, and if that's something that you want to stay in or, okay,
so
we're cool with that.
It's very different out here than what I was used to back home.
Okay.
Right, very different. So just to kind of take like a half step back, we talked about the Red Rock store. I started in sales there. I got moved to assistant sales manager / finance manager. Then I went to the Las Vegas Harley Davidson store to be the general sales manager to run their whole sales and finance department. And I was 24, 25 when I did that. And that was a big deal. Like, people are in the industry for a very long time and have a lot more experience than me, older than me, before they ever get that shot, right? And I was given the opportunity to do it, right? And it was really cool because, dude, I went from the Red Rock store to the Vegas store, I was there for like 2-3 weeks, and then the whole world shut down for COVID.
Yeah,
right, so it was like a super
Those
weird
times.
transition time, and our store shut down for a while. And when we came back, I only had like 2 salespeople that stuck around, and so it was a grind. And we had 1 or 2 months that we like really killed it. It was like 3 of us, right? And I had a great time there, and my experience at Vegas Harley was next to none. Right? Of course, you're going to have challenges like you do at any job, right? But I loved that store, and I didn't leave there because the store was bad. We left Vegas, right? And Erica was the GM there, and still is the GM there. And I told her, I was like, if I hadn't have left, I'd still be working for you, right? But we just wanted to go experience something else. So we had looked for a while at kind of like other places. We had like some different places that we wanted to end up, and Florida was kind of always on the list. And at one point, we had gone and checked out some other stores. They flew us out there. They weren't quite what we had wanted to do. Some stores were really awesome, just not in a good location, or there were some good locations that the job just wasn't
I heard there was
right.
Alabama was in there, right?
Alabama was in there. Allison was like, nope. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So, which is okay. And so then, honestly, I kind of was feeling like a little bit discouraged a little bit. And then these guys reached out to me. He's like, hey, that I had talked to you about going to this other store. He's like, hey, I know you didn't want to come here. I have a guy who's looking for someone like you. So he introduced me to the store that I work at now, and then they flew us out here, and then we did that whole thing. And it's a very different atmosphere. So Florida has like 5 of the top 10 dealers in the whole country, and 3 or 4 of them are in like Central Florida.
Is just out of curiosity, is Daytona one of, or maybe it was when it was Bruce Rossmeyer. I don't think it is anymore, but is that one of the top stores still?
No, so they do really, really well in March and October.
Okay, just during the bike events.
Yeah, for Daytona Bike Week and Biketoberfest, right? So they do really well. The rest of the year, I mean, they do well, but they're not like a super, super powerhouse store, right? It's Seminole Harley Davidson where I'm at, Orlando Harley Davidson, and Space Coast Harley Davidson. Those 3 are like always up there. And then like the one that always beats the rest of us is Riverside Harley Davidson in California. They're like consistently number 1 like every year. But so that was a big adjustment, a very, very different ownership / management style. And the store has also been open and around for a long time. So there's a lot that kind of comes with that. And just because the industry is so different here, and I had no idea about any of this until we moved here, but because all of these massive dealerships are relatively close to each other, it's all the same guys. And they've all worked at all the other stores. And over the course of years, they've all kind of bounced around and come back and left and come back and left to the same stores. So it's funny to kind of watch how they interact with each other and carry things from other stores, good habits and not good habits.
Yeah.
Right? And that's been hard. That's been tough. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And it is cool to be part of a store that does move so many units, right? And it also is good to kind of go to something that maybe isn't what you thought it was, to realize that the cool things that you've done in the past.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was just talking to someone at the store yesterday that used to work there, that doesn't work there anymore, and he was like telling me, he's like, sometimes I think about why you left the Vegas store, because it sounds like you had a great gig there. And I did, and I know I did even when I was there, but like we wanted to go experience something else.
Yeah.
And so it's cool.
Course.
You know, like, and one thing that I think has been really hard for me is since I started in like the motorcycle space, my trajectory has been like this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard to kind of not continue to do that, and for several different reasons. And, but I'm also in a sense grateful for it. Right. And I'll keep this kind of short, but when Allison and I first started dating, she used to love to ask people, what's the best and worst thing that's ever happened to you? Right? And I don't even remember what the answer for the best thing was, but my answer for the worst thing, I kind of sat there for a while and I said, like, I don't have a worse thing, right? Of course, bad things have happened
Yeah.
in life, but there's always a lesson to be learned, right? And you can either choose to sit there and be sad and hate your life and be miserable the whole time, or you can kind of give yourself a smack in the ass and say, hey man, like, these are lessons that you have to learn it, figure it out, and keep growing, right? And I mean, to be totally honest, there was definitely a while where I was like, dude, like, I'm having a really tough time, right? But a couple months ago, I decided, I was like, all right, like, this is what it is. Let's turn it around, let's fix it, and kind of gave myself a little bit of a life reality check, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's
right?
where you're at now.
Yeah, you know, feeling better about some stuff and feel more definitive about some things and some things coming up, so it'll be cool.
One of the things that stands out to me the most, just talking to you, is, and I'm going to make myself sound old, but it is unique, and it's just through talking to you and obviously being around Allison, and, you know, to have the perspective, I think is what more likely the perspective. Like, even when you were just saying, you know, you've come to the awareness of living your life to the fullest, and just having that type of mentality, or, you know, realizing and kind of life checking yourself, like, hey, look, I can sit here sad, but having the mindset to kind of shift that stuff around, you know, that stuff's not easy.
No.
And the reason I said I didn't want to make myself sound old, but just even from like younger generations really battle with that, right? Especially in today's society and climate, right? It's very hard for people to get at least a reality check of like, hey, this is the way it is, and I need to turn. What contributes to that? Is it something that was just like in you, or is it books that you read, or where does that come from? That awareness.
A couple places. I mean, one of them kind of circled back to the beginning of the conversation is when I left school, talk about self-criticism and evaluating yourself, right? And that's always a thought that I have in the back of my mind. But I've always felt that even from when I was a little kid, I've always been very self-aware and aware of others and their situations, right? And I've always kind of felt myself to be very good at looking at the big picture. And I do think that's kind of one of my stronger leadership qualities, right, is to kind of not sweat the smaller stuff as long as we're on the right track to the bigger things. And I just know that it's really easy to get sucked into the small stuff, right? And I've always had very big goals, and I still have very big goals. And sometimes to get there, you have to tell yourself, hey, man, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really hard. And no one is ever going to be harder on myself than I am.
Yeah.
And it's always been that way. Like, sometimes to a fault, but I expect myself to win. I expect myself to be good at things. And so I have to just make sure I keep myself in check sometimes. And that comes with it. So, and honestly, I think that kind of comes with a little bit of like self-love, right? I think if you're going to claim that, you know, you like who you are and you love who you are, you have to be willing to tell yourself when you're doing things good and when you're not doing things good. Yeah. You know, it's a double-edged sword there. So
it's hard.
Yeah,
but it's
sure.
also necessary, like
for
extremely necessary.
Yeah.
For people, and we'll kind of wrap this up because I don't even know how long we've been going. But there's so many directions I want to go right now, but I have to also keep in mind that we're taking over the Petal Talk podcast.
Yeah, right.
So I already have plans that we're going to shift a lot of our conversation into another platform.
Sure.
Because there's a lot I want to talk about. But to wrap this one up, just kind of hitting on that, right? You know, climbing up as fast as you have at the age that, like you said, is in the industry super rare, right? A leader, you know, taking these risks to pack up and move, and just identifying those opportunities for people out there that may struggle with that or may be trying to navigate that way. What's some advice you have for them?
You just got to know who you want to be, right?
Clear identity.
Clear. And I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe that changing or growing over time. But I do know that certain people are built to do certain things.
Yeah.
From the time I was a kid, whether as my parents or church leaders or teachers or other mentors, I was always told when I was a kid that I needed to make sure I carried myself in a certain way because I was a leader, right? And even when I didn't want to be, right? When I was a kid, I'm like, I want to do my own thing and I don't want to have to be an example. Some people are just built for those things, right? And this is not negative. Some people are meant to just go to their 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and go home. Some people are meant to flip burgers, but there's other people that are meant to do more. And I've just always known that I'm meant to do that, right? And so I also think that if you are wanting to be that person, there's absolutely no reason that you can't.
Yeah,
there's too many great opportunities, especially living in the States, especially living in just the day and age that we're in, that if you want to be successful, you can do it. And I think people get scared because it's hard, right? And it takes time and it takes a lot of effort, and you're going to have to sacrifice things. And you're not always going to get to go hang out with your friends when you want to, or you might lose people in your life that you once thought were important because they don't see the vision, and that's okay.
Yep.
Right? And that just tells you that they weren't supposed to be there anyways. But be true to yourself, know who you are, and whatever it is that you want to be 100% that person.
Like it.
Just do it.
There you have it.
But yeah.
There you have it. Like it, man. Well, this was fun.
This was a good time.
There's a lot I still want to talk about.
Yeah.
So like I said, we'll switch that. But that's it. I think you get Allison back the next episode. But make sure you hit the subscribe button. Comment. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out the rows, and then we'll put your links. Sure. Are you on social media a lot?
Nah,
just
not a ton.
In case you want to follow Justin, we'll drop the link into the thing, man. But
Perfect.
yeah, awesome, man.
Cool.
We'll see you soon.
Right on, brother.